Hi there, Paul here from Volaticus, an aerial production company with interest in aviation and simulation. Today we're going to do the final leg of our ski resorts tour, although we're currently parked in North Las Vegas, so we're going to depart from there and we're going to fly out to Oceano, which is a seaside airport. It's actually a custom airport provided free of charge by Orbix. That's free of charge to anyone. You can download that from their site. It's quite a challenging airport to get into, but perfect for this kind of aircraft, which is the Epic E1000. So we did a flight from Aspen to North Las Vegas on the last episode. We're going to fly off to L52, which is the code for Oceano. Let's have a look at the weather. So we've got pressure 2985, wind from the northwest, 4 knots, fairly light wind, sky clear, nothing below 12,000, visibility is good. And we're going to check L52 area, but unfortunately L52 isn't reporting weather. It's a fairly small airfield, so the nearest major airfield is Santa Maria. So it's reporting marginal VFR at that point, so we're probably going to be looking at an IFR approach into there. Currently showing broken 2400, scattered 1200, visibility is good, and the wind is easterly at 5 knots, pressure 2998. Could be using ForeFlight for navigation today. ForeFlight is an aviator's app which runs on iOS, so if you don't have an iPhone or an iPad, then I'm afraid it's not going to work for you. But it's if you do, it's well worth a look at. Now, this is not an app which is designed specifically for flight simulation. In fact, I think they enable compatibility with flight simulators purely so that people can use the app to practice on the ground. Okay, so we can start by entering our route. We can do that visually if you want. So KVGT is flashing at the moment on the map, so just click on that and add to the route. And then go into the flight plan mode, and you see KVGT is in there. And then we can just simply click in there and type L52, and that should match with the airport that we're going to. It's 274 nautical miles. So what ForeFlight will do is to pick up on any routes that are known between these airports. And there is one. You see under routes there's one. Now we don't have to take that route, but we can have a look at it. Just click on there and it will give us the routing, and you can see actually it's not exactly a direct route. So what we're going to do today, I think just out of interest, will be to create a custom route. We'll ignore that one. So what we can do is click to close that, and what it's done is drawn a straight line between our airports there, as you can see. Now we're going to fly at IFR, so let's get the high level IFR map open. And what we can do is we can actually start putting in waypoints in here. So let's see where we can start from there. So we've got North Vegas there. So we have some restricted areas, so that's why it was routing us around there. But let's say we want to go north of that. And what we could do is just go up to this first waypoint here. Let's literally just drag it to the waypoint. Oops. Like that, and then we can confirm the one that we want, which I think is that one, Bicker. And then we can head towards let's see, this VOR here. It's a bit difficult to see which one it's picked up on there. Clovis CZQ. So add that to the routes. Now that won't necessarily be in the order we want it, so we can just move that there. That's better. So it's quite a dog leg actually, that. Maybe that's not what we want, so we're probably going to tweak this in a minute. But let's just have a look. Yes, that's quite a long way north, further north than we want really. So let's put another waypoint in here, Avenol. And what we'll do here is there's a VOR here which is TTE, and we'll add that in there. We'll just do that in a different way. So before Avenel, we'll say insert before, and then just type TTE, insert. And that's an alternative way of putting it in there. Let's have a look at our route now. So I'm probably going to remove this one. It's not quite what we want. It's a bit of a too much of a dog leg, and that looks pretty good actually. There we are. And if you click on flight plan, it actually gives 290 miles, which is quite good. Okay, let's get the weather for North Las Vegas. So a couple of ways. In ForeFlight it has the a weather option there. Let's just zoom in a little bit so we make sure we click on Las Vegas. And on the weather tab, it's giving us the current METAR, which is northwesterly at 4, as we saw before. 2985 is the altimeter. So I was using another app as well, which is Station Weather. And it's an app which is downloadable on devices. And I've got Santa Maria in here at the moment, so go back to North Las Vegas. So this is a paid app, but it's only a few pounds, a few dollars, and it works out pretty well. And this is particularly useful if you don't have ForeFlight and you want access to weather on a device. Okay, let us plan the route now. So let's go back to ForeFlight. So the plan is in ForeFlight, but it's not in the aircraft yet. So let's hop into the aircraft here. The other thing that I want to do is I want to bring up the checklist which I've actually created for this aircraft, and that appears on my my iPhone, which is quite useful. So what I will do is make this available if you're interested. It's the Epic E1000 checklist. It's just been taken from the one that comes with this aircraft. Now this is the G1000 edition, so it uses the Garmin, well, the default Garmin navigation system, just because I'm used to it. You can also get another variant which I can't remember the name of, but there's two variations of this plane, and it's a shame you couldn't switch between the two, but I went for the Garmin because I'm used to it. So let's just go through the checks here into the aircraft. And now I've got the battery on, which is a bit naughty because I was setting it up earlier. Let's have a look and make sure the brake is set. Flags and chocks removed, so on the outside of the aircraft. So there is an option here to have static elements set, which puts all the flags, chocks, and also the tow bar onto the aircraft. And if you unclick that, it will remove everything. Condition lever, and that's down, that's cut off. Gear, and that's down. Battery switches can come on now. There's two of those. Flaps, put it down for the outside inspection. Electric flaps, of course, and we can check, make sure they're both consistent, and then we can put the flaps up. And we'd also normally check all the lights. I'm not going to bother with that today. The other thing we need to do though is we need to check fuel. So just put the now at the moment we have a, so to bring up open that. This is a kind of combined screen because we don't have the avionics screen on, and it shows fuel's very, very empty. So I need to get some fuel for the flight today. So let's go ahead and do that, and we do that from the Arabesque menu here. So the left tank is completely empty. I ran that dry. So what we'll do is go for about 150 kilos a side. And I love the way actually as you fuel up, it actually dips the aircraft. So we don't have to, it's not an exact science here, but we want 150 odd per side. It's fine. The other thing while we're on here is you can weight up the aircraft. And this actually will, if I go into the external view and get rid of that, and zoom in a bit, and you can see we've actually got a person in the co-pilot seat and actually some children in the rear seats, but you cannot see them inside the aircraft. This is an external view only, and the only effect this has is to add weight. You don't get kids screaming at you or anything like that, which is obviously quite fortuitous. But if we want to go fully heavy, what we'll do today is we'll have the co-pilot, and then maybe we'll have one passenger and one kid, so we're not completely heavy. Go for 60 kilos of baggage, so we're flying a little bit under the maximum weight. And while we're here, the other thing we might want is to put ground power on, which is a portable ground power unit, and you can see it appears there. You can actually hear it when you hop into the aircraft. You can really hear that now. Okay, so we've got the fuel loaded up, so that's all ready. Let's just continue with the checklist. So it says battery switch is off now, after we've checked the fuel, and that's probably where you do the external walk around. We're going to keep it on because we need to have those on for the next step. Fuel is actually on the right tank, and that's because I was flying this a little bit earlier and I left it on there. Just going to switch the yokes off, actually makes it much easier to not see those. Just make sure the next step is all of the levers, so it's power, propeller and condition lever, all off or down, landing gear down, so it's actually 4 levers to check. Switches off, so it's referring to all of these switches, they're all off at the moment. Battery switches on, they are already. We can now switch the avionics switch on. Now, one thing I should point out is that I'm not going to be doing much clicking around the cockpit because I've got a Stream Deck Elgato Stream Deck unit, which is a programmable keyboard, which is fantastic for flight simulator use, and I'll put some information on that. And I've got that programmed so I can switch from that, as you can see, and I'll put some details on the show notes. So we've got the master switch on now. The other thing I've set up is the PDF and the navigation display. Just need to bring those into view because they are a little bit big actually for this particular configuration. It's just slightly lower resolution than I'm used to because I'm recording. So I will just scale those down a little bit. I managed to lose both of those. There we are. Get them in the right order. So what I do is I've got hotkeys on the joystick here, so I can quickly bring those up into view, which is quite useful. The problem is if you have them in view and then you look out the side, they follow you. So it's very handy to be able to quickly whip those up, get rid of them, look, and then back and bring those back in view. So let's set the pressure. For North Las Vegas is 2985 as of 24 minutes ago. So we're nearly there, 2985, there we are, 2200, and that sounds about right for Vegas. Back to the checklist. ELT arms, so that is over here, and that's set up, that's armed. Beacon on. Again, that's on a hotkey, so all the lights are down here in this panel here. I've set up some views as well that make it slightly easier to edit the various controls here. Now we've got the avionics screen on. Let's actually put the flight plan in now, because we're now on the engine start checks. And we'll start going to ForeFlight, and that will actually give us our routing. So this is where having this sort of bigger screen is actually quite useful. And I have a flight plan screen on the Stream Deck all set up, ready to go, which is really handy. So flight plan mode. So the first thing we'll do is I'm going to just delete the flight plan because that was a previous one. As you probably know, it will always give you the previous one. Now we're going to try and put L52 in here, see what we get. I don't know, it might be in. Yep, it is Oceano County in California. So that'll give us our direct route. Let's say we will keep the nearest IFR airfield in view in mind, because that might be somewhere we have to fly and approach into. But the first one is Bicker, B-I-K-K-R. That's the first waypoint. So I've set up the Stream Deck to enable me to use the keys on that instead of the keys on the G1000. Just find it slightly easier. You can actually set it up so you can just type on the keyboard, which is obviously the easiest. The only problem is that I just find it a bit more realistic doing it this way. So as you enter in the waypoints, just checking, obviously we are going towards the west. So Bicker 274 is westerly at 80 miles, it sounds about right. Got to be careful in case you put in a waypoint which is different to what you are expecting. It's 3,000 miles away and it's somewhere in Afghanistan. You don't want to find that out in the air. Next one is TTE. So it's not a long flight today. Oops, TTE, and that's too late. And again, just check it. So now we're southwest 116 miles. That's the leg distance. So you can add that on to the first one. So it's about 200 total, and then 92 direct L52. But we do have a final one to put in, which is Avenal. Oops. And that is then another 50 miles, so that's more or less on our route, and that's the total distance. So that's a flight plan in there. Next thing is to work out our cruise altitude. I'm probably going to go initially for flight level 200. This aircraft, despite being a propeller aircraft, has a turbine engine, and it can get up to flight level 300 and cruises pretty nicely at levels between 200 and 300, which is fabulous. So let us put that in. I'm going to set up an intermediate altitude though. We'll set up 12,000 initially. So again, I have a switch on the joystick for doing that. I don't have one for the hundreds though. There we go. So 12,000 feet initially. And then we'll get up to 200, flight level 200, and then we'll probably do a gradual climb from there. Okay, there's our route in flight, and you can see not quite a straight line, but it's not far off. So departing from Las Vegas, in terms of the terrain, not really a huge amount to bother us. There's some mountains obviously towards the west. But we're going to be we'll be well above those by the time we get over that, so that's not going to be a problem. So let's go ahead. We've got the fuel. We can go ahead and start. We'll continue the checklist now. Okay, so we are on the which tank are we on? On the right hand tank. Okay, so I'm going to put the fuel pump now on the right, and there's a little check that we need to do here. There's another mode on this screen, which is this one here. It gives you a bit more data, and you can see fuel pressure 23. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I've got a key set up to switch to the other tank, and when we do that, pressure drops, and then back to the right tank and the pressure goes up. So that's one of the checks that we need to do. We're going to keep it on the right tank. It's meant to be the fullest, but they're fairly well balanced. So as long as we have it on the fullest tank, or one of the other tanks, not the lowest one, that's the key thing. So now we're going to start, we're in the startup routine now. Okay, so what we need to do is close the door up, And let me just switch to the outside view. And you can see the door animation now. Now we need the ground power unit connected, ideally for startup, because we need decent amount of voltage. Let me just open up this screen here. So we've got 28 volts coming in, which is absolutely fine. If we didn't have the ground power unit, we'd be lower than that, and it would actually take longer to start, or we might not be able to start. So it's good to keep that in the voltage level higher. And what I'll do is I'll just close this temporarily while we go through the startup sequence. So I've got some keys on the joystick and everything set up. So the first thing is the starter, and what we're going to do is be monitoring these gauges here, the engine instrument gauges. So let's put the starter on first of all. You hear it all firing up. And then at 8 we put the ignition on, and when it gets up to 15 we actually put the condition lever to low idle, and you can see its engine is spooled up now, propeller starting. At this point we're just monitoring the engine. There's nothing else that we want to be doing at this point other than monitoring those gauges as the engine's spooling up. It's a really lovely sound actually on this aircraft. Okay, looks like we've got a good start, and what we can do now is get rid of the ground power unit, and you can actually hear that sound of that disappearing. You see it's actually gone now. Okay, we can turn the starter off now. Sorry, the igniter. The igniter is a bit like a spark. Which we'll actually switch that on just before takeoff, but now we've got the engines running, turn that off and make sure the engines are running without any assistance. We set ground idle on the condition lever, so that's kind of a low RPM setting, and that's quite useful to keep it on that setting for taxi. Let's see what else we have. The generator switch comes on automatically. Let me just put that into the view here. Okay, yeah, so the starter on here, so it's not easy to see. It's actually the generator, which comes on automatically. So we're just checking that's the case. And also just making sure our voltage is above 27 volts, which indicates that we've got the batteries being charged. And our oil pressure and temperatures all in green levels. So that's all checked. So the next stage is to put a number of switches on, which is the standby altimeter switch, and I've got these set up on the Stream Deck device, so I can actually put all of those on. Then the trim master, the autopilot, main master switch, stick pusher, and pressure as well. This is the pressurization. Now the doors are closed. The cabin will be pressurized. Flight plan, that's all in, so I'm happy with that. And what I'll do is just I'm just going to close that for the moment like that. And in fact, I can even zoom out. So I've got different modes set on this Stream Deck. So one is for before start, engine start, then take off, and then in the air, and then approach after landing and shut down, and each one of those gives access to the controls that you would need for each stage of flight. So the next step is taxi clearance, which I'm not going to simulate ATC today, but we'll assume we have taxi clearance today, and I'm going to just demonstrate some things about this aircraft that will come in handy. So we've got the condition is on low idle. Next thing is to move the propeller into the fully forward position, and then covering the brakes. I'm using rudder pedal here today, and just add a little bit of power. First thing, of course, brake check. So what I was saying actually is about the condition lever, having it in the low idle. There's two settings really, low idle and high idle. Low idle is really useful for the ground. If you have it in high idle, and what I'll do is I'll put it in high idle now, it adds quite a bit of power to the aircraft, and it can end up going far too fast, even if you have the throttle closed as I have now. So I'm going to bring that back to low idle. Just continue with the checks. We've done the brake check. Flap will be 10 for takeoff. Check the trim is set correctly. And the other thing to do is to check the beta. And that's like the reverse thrusters. I see another aircraft out there ahead of us. And then the rest of the checks are done at the whole short line. And what we'll do is we're going to be checking the governor there, which is to make sure that our propeller pitch control works okay. So the other thing we haven't yet done is set the transponder. I'm going to assume, as is often the case, that we're given transponder code on departure. What we could do though is just warm that up. So I have some settings on the Stream Deck for that as well. So we put it in standby, and that will go onto altitude when we depart. And the other thing I didn't put on is the taxi lights. Nothing else, no other lights are needed at this point. See what one that's look like an aircraft that's come in there. I think he's waiting to cross. Maybe not. It's taking off. Okay. Into wind. Brakes set. Okay. Now high idle, and you hear the RPM go up slightly there. And then we set about 1500. And then the propeller back to feather. We're just checking the governor. And that's tested okay. The transponder will just set now, I think. Let's put that into altitude. Landing light on, strobes can come on as well. The other thing that we would like to put on at this point for takeoff will be the pitot heat, and we'll stick the igniter on as well. The other thing is the autopilot mode. At the moment it's set to pitch and roll, but doesn't work really very well. So what I'm going to do, particularly for the pitch, set vertical speed mode, and then nose up. Normally set it about 2,000 feet a minute, like that. And then I have a master switch on the joystick as well, which can be engaged as soon as we are ready. So I am ready to go. So quick check, that was done from memory, to quick check of the pre-takeoff thing. So external lights we have, nose wheel steering is coupled, power lever, okay, so this is the takeoff procedure. So we lift off the ground about 70-75 knots. I find it's worth having a little bit of backward pressure, although the aircraft wants to go fairly quickly off the ground, so you kind of have to come back a little bit on that in order to keep it on the ground. Okay, runway 30, just do a quick compass check here as well. So 30 it is. High idle. Now the other thing is with turbines, is turbo propeller planes, is that you shouldn't just throw the throttle all the way forward. You need to come up near the red line, and that's what I'm going to do here. Just holding on the brakes a little bit of back pressure, and let's go. Nose all coming up a bit. So say keep it on there, 75, and we can go. Positive rate gear up. And then flaps can come up as well. And then straight into autopilot mode. And I'm going to just set heading sync and heading, and that will maintain the current heading. Come back a little bit on the propeller. We'll just continue climbing straight ahead at the present rate. And just have a look on full flight. You can see us on that map. It's a bit of a complex map. So we're flying off to the right of the centre line. That's indicated also on the navigation display. We're set up to go up to 12,000. What I'm going to do is, now we're on 190, is just hit flight level climb, and that will hold that speed. It will pitch up or down to hold that speed. And then I've got a key to move the heading bug as well to 240. So we're going to fly back towards that track to intercept that. It's our navigation track. And while we're at it, we can go through the after takeoff checks here. So we can switch the igniter off. Pitot can remain on, that's absolutely fine, that will remain on for the flight. Landing light until 10,000, and that can go off. Power and climb is set. All of the gauges are in the green. Voltage is good. Pressurization is fine. The other thing we might want to do is switch the air conditioning on here. There's no simulation of this, of course. And then could also put the passenger oxygen as well, while we're thinking about it. So transition altitude will be 18,000, so we'll be on local pressure until then. So just passing through now, let's put the nav mode on, and that will now follow our track. So there's nothing special about the scenery here, but it is the Ortho 4 XP, the free download for this region, which is Nevada, I think. As we're flying into California, that's actually going to be the Orbix True Earth scenery for Northern California. I think it covers Oceano. May be wrong, actually. It's maybe it's covered by Southern California, which I don't yet have. So let's keep the climb going, and we'll go up to 18,000. So we're above 10,000 now. So it's not a rule, but we can switch the landing light off at this point. Sometimes, if we're really insignificantly busy area with a high airport, it's worth keeping that on, but generally speaking that goes off at 10,000. Let's put a squawk in now. Now this is one thing the Stream Deck is really useful for. I've programmed keys for the number 0 to 7 for the transponder. Let me just bring a bigger view of that now, and we'll set a squawk at say 3207. 3207, and that's just typed straight in. It's a lot quicker than having to go through each of the digits. So on ForeFlight, this is running off my phone, so this can go either in a north up view, which is the view that we have at the moment, or you can change to be track up centered or track up forward. And track up forward is actually a pretty good view. Keeps your plane at the bottom of the screen, but it's also always showing the track up, and that means that the map on the G1000 can be a north up view, so it's quite a nice complement to that. So we will keep an eye on that weather as well. One thing about this aircraft is that it's about 300 miles trip. We'll do that in an hour, no problem. This is a very, very quick aircraft. Although one thing actually I could do with just bringing the nose down slightly, and by that I mean increase the speed. We'll go up to 210 or so. And as you get fast also, you need to bring the propeller back. It's a bit like gears on a car, if you drive a car with gears. Otherwise you really overspin the propellers. You set it more and more coarse as your speed goes up, and that gives you the performance that you should get from the aircraft. Almost to the point that when you're at cirrus altitude, that would be almost halfway between full fine and full feather. You just have to keep decreasing that as you speed up. Let's have a quick look at the Santa Maria weather there. So it's 1:30 at 4, scatter 2400, visibility 10. So actually that's fine. That's actually improved since earlier on. Now we're hoping to go to L52 Oceano, which doesn't have any weather or no weather being reported at the moment, or at least on this program. We do have it on ForeFlight. There is weather report, I think, for that. So let's just bring up L52 and click on weather. He's probably or possibly taking it from local airports, scatter 2700. So it's VFR, which is great. We're just reaching 18,000 at this point.
Climbing through transition altitude.
I'll just let the speed build up a little bit. And then we're going to set up 240 rather, and we will put it in flight change mode, and this is just using that holding the speed to climb our aircraft. So we're getting, even at this level, we're getting a decent rate of climb. So now we've gone through the transition altitude, we'll need to switch to 2992, or standard pressure. And the other thing to do at this point is just think about the approach. We have got the weather for Oceano. I don't know if there's ATIS. I'm going to have a look now on ForeFlight, see if there's anything for 52. It's an AWOS service, 118.375, so we'll tune that in there. Once again, I've set up some keys on the Stream Deck for doing the comms, so it's 118 we have, and then 375. Probably won't get anything out here, but 18375 switch. We can leave that on, so it'll obviously spring to life at some point. It's quite a small screen on an iPhone. It's really ForeFlight works a lot better on a tablet, but you know, it works fine. I like the fact I've got my checklist on there, I've got the weather, I've got ForeFlight on there without having a huge tablet display on the desk. So just about the hardware, I'm using a AV8R01, which is an aviation joystick, with some of the buttons programmed up there, mostly for autopilot control. I have the Stream Deck, as I mentioned, and also I have Cytec tri-throttle configuration, which actually is perfect for this aircraft because you've got the 3 levers set up on for each one of those in the aircraft, which really gives it an intuitive feel. Plus I've also got the gear up and down, the flaps up and down set up on that particular device. And what I do like is the fact that as you change aircraft, you can set up a different configuration. So if it's a twin engine aircraft like the Challenger 300, I can use the 2 of those levers then for the engines. Of course it doesn't have mixture, it doesn't have propeller, so actually that 3rd lever you could have if you wanted for air brakes, or just leave it, or maybe even have it as a flap lever if you wanted. I just leave it blank. So I am tweaking the propeller, making it more and more coarse as the speed's going up. Even though we're holding our indicated airspeed, of course, as you probably realise, that our ground speed 293 at the moment, and we have a very, very slight headwind as well, so it's pretty good going. Now the thing about this aircraft is really you could just get in anywhere in it. It's got the reverse thrust beta control, it's got good brakes. You could just land on a dime on this thing, so there's almost nowhere that you wouldn't go into. You'd probably want to avoid grass fields or gravel, anything with loose debris on, but really it's a fabulous aircraft. I set up some views as well. This is the cabin view. It's quite a nice one there. So even though it's only a 6-seater, if you had this as a commuter, you could probably get another row of seats in there if you wanted to, if you were that frugal. It's not obviously designed for that, but plenty of space inside. I've never actually been in one of these in real life, but I have been in a Meridian, and it's very luxurious. So these sort of aircraft would typically be owned and operated by the owner. It's unlikely that someone would have a private pilot, personal pilot to fly one of these for them. It's kind of an owner-operator aircraft. So I was just going to say, yeah, we should be approaching the 24. I didn't see the 2400 armed at the top there, but it has given the indication that we're reaching level. So we're going to let the speed build up a little bit. As I say, we have a little bit of a headwind. And there's Bicker on the screen. That's our first waypoint. In terms of performance, we get about, in the cruise, about 60, just under 60 gallons an hour, which is a gallon a minute, of course. Just let the speed build up a little bit. We do have a marginal headwind, mostly a crosswind at the moment. let that build up to about 315 and then power back a little bit. I'm bringing back the propeller as well. As I say, at higher speed, it really requires a bit of tweaking. To an extent, actually, these aircraft are a bit more challenging to fly than a jet, which is relatively simple. So let's bring the power back a little bit, and just looking at the fuel flow, gallons per hour, 58-ish, that'll do, that's fine. So we've been running on the right tank, so the next thing we want to do here is to switch over to the left tank. We'll do that now. So we're down to a quarter on rights. Or is it? It's not a quarter, it's actually 20%. And so switched over to the left. Fuel pump off is a reminder that I don't have the left fuel pump on. There we go. Okay, just past Bicker. So the next thing to do would be to think about our approach. I'm just going to do a quick weather check, see how we're doing. So Santa Maria, okay, the weather hasn't been updated since we last checked, but it's looking good. So as I say, we're going to L52. This is maybe 20 miles away, maybe a little bit less than that. So it'll have very similar weather. The only thing is Oceano's on the coast and probably get some fog, whereas Santa Maria may not, and that certainly was the case earlier when I was checking. So the next thing would be to check the descent, or to plan for the descent. So what we can do is open the flight plan. Let's bring that up bigger. And so what we can do is put in an altitude for L52, and we can stick in something like 2,500, and I can either use the keys for that. Really the easiest thing to do. Once we put that in, it will actually give us our descent profile. And there's a little bit at the bottom here, the current VNAV profile, will actually tell us if we want to maintain a 2500, a 2.5 degree descent down to 2500 L52. We need to start in just under 25 minutes. But what we can do if we want is we can configure that so we could actually go for 3 degree, which is slightly steeper, and that means that the time to the top of descent has gone up a bit because we'll start that a bit later. And I think I'll leave it on that. I think that's quite a nice descent rate. Keep as high as possible for as long as possible is generally a good principle. So in terms of preparing for that, what I tend to do is if we left the altitude on 24,000, it won't actually do anything. It will always stay at that altitude. What we can do is just check the sector safety altitude for each of the areas. So there's a number, this one here, 12.9, 12 and then a small 9 means that sector's 12,900 is the safety altitude in that region, but we're just about to pass into one which is 13.5, which is down there, and 16.8. So actually what we can do if we want is to actually set that sector safety altitude as we go into each sector. And that means if we had to do a rapid decompression, or if we had a rapid decompression and need to descend, we'd know what that minimum would be and can keep that updated. So we're level at 24,000, but I'm just going to bring that down to 17,000, and nothing happens, of course. But also when we start the VNAV descent, it's useful or imperative that we set a lower altitude, otherwise it's not going to start descending. The other thing to cause that to happen is to arm the VNAV. So just press the VNAV button, and VPTH, vertical path, is armed. And what will happen is when we get to the point of descent, a little glide slope light indicator will come in, and when we hit that descent point, it will then go into descent mode in order to maintain a 3 degree path down to our altitude. Now, typically if we're landing at Oceano, we probably want to descend to 2500, maybe 5 miles away, so that we're ready. But what we'll do is we'll overfly Oceano to get some shots of that, and then we'll probably go into the downwind. Let's just check what the wind is doing there actually at the moment. So actually we don't have anything on there. Let's have a look in ForeFlight. Okay, so the wind is light and variable, so we can actually land on either direction on the runway. Runway itself is 709 metres, about 2,000 feet. It's not very long, absolutely fine for this aircraft. I have actually got the Challenger 300 in there, but it really is scary. It's not really long enough for the Challenger, but for the Epic E1000, it's absolutely fantastic. So that's kind of our long range shot. You can actually see we're approaching the halfway point this time. You can see on ForeFlight now we're just very near L52, just approaching Avenor, 37 seconds to the top of descent. You see the little magenta mark on the altimeter strip is ready, and as we approach that point, that will actually start coming down a bit like a glide slope. one thing to watch out for is that that doesn't always seem to trigger a descent, which seems to be a bit of a bug. So we're going to watch out for that. And if it doesn't, I'll set up the descent manually, but hopefully that will, fingers crossed, that will actually do it on its own. And no, it hasn't. So we'll set that up manually. And what we can do is the little cyan marker, we just put that on that magenta marker, and that will give us our required descent rate. The other thing is to come back on the power, of course, now we're in the descent. And let's have a look at our sector safety altitude as well. So it's 75, 75, 73. Okay, so 75. We could set 8,000. As I say, we'll actually let's see if it picks up on that at some point. But it gives you the estimates. So Avenel, it's expecting to be at 17, just under 17,000, and then to be at 2,500 as we program in for L52. Now, if there was an approach in here, we'd set that up now, but don't anticipate anything. Let's have a quick look at the weather for Santa Maria. Wind light variable is 29.98 is our altimeter setting. 13 degrees, a few clouds at 2,500, and good visibility. So it should be an uneventful approach into Oceano. Just now we're in the descent, have a look through the checklist. So power and airspeed is all set. Okay, pitot, make sure that is on still, and I have to just get rid of these, and I can see that's on. ATIS we haven't received yet, so we got 18375 in case they are broadcasting. We should pick up on that, but we have checked the digital METAR, and that's fine. Just pick that up. Approach briefing, we're going to actually go into the overhead at Oceano, and then we'll land on the westerly runway there. I'll have to just remind myself what that is in a moment. Nav aids we don't need, it's going to be a VFR approach. As we approach the transition altitude, obviously we'll switch to 2989, was it? 2998 rather, which is our Santa Maria pressure setting. It shouldn't be too different to Oceano. So just notice we've just gone past our magenta marker on the descent, so let's try to keep in alignment with that. It should be doing that for us automatically, but as I say, it doesn't always, so you have to watch it. And going below 10,000, the landing lights will go on, and then airspeed below 250 as well. And then the before landing checks will be next. And what we can do at this point, actually, it's quite nice for arrival, is to switch onto the VFR section, or show a little bit of the terrain. It gets quite busy though on the iPhone screen. This is why I'm saying it's slightly better experience on a tablet. It's just a shame actually they haven't produced it for Android, because I think they're probably losing a bit of custom. Their logic, as they are obviously aimed at real pilots, for flight producers, their logic's probably that a lot of those pilots are more likely to have an Apple device than anything else. So we're just approaching the overhead for Avenel at this point, and be a left turn. And there we go. Now, as we're descending, going to thicker air, essentially our ground speed will be reducing slightly. Okay, and so as a result of that, we also need to start bringing the propeller forward. It's the exact opposite of we did on the climb out. So just note on ForeFlight, the nearest altimeter is 30. So let's put in, let's change that to 20. Well, let's change it to 30. Actually, it's not going to make a huge amount of difference. That will be the nearest one to where we are at the moment, though. So one of the things in ForeFlight, we can, if I can open the right screen here, you can actually set some data at the bottom here in a little strip, and I've got nearest barometer, that's KPRB, which is 30, which is what it's picked up on, and that will update as we fly along the track. Probably pick up on KSBP when we're near there, and that's actually probably more accurate for L52. So ForeFlight is a package that you can subscribe from 3 months for about $50 or 1 year for about $100. And there's 3 tiers, and really for the simulator flyer, the basic one, the cheapest one, which is $100 a year, is probably the one to go for. The others offer fabulous extra capability, but unless you're actually using it in a plane, I think a lot of us would actually just not be able to justify the extra expense. I mean, certainly if you're an owner-operator, there's a $300 a year package which gives you all kinds of good stuff, but as a simulator user, you're not actually going to benefit from that at all. So you see we're approaching a cloud layer at this time, so my eyes are on the outside air temperature, which is currently -12. So I'm thinking we're probably going to need to switch on some anti-ice at some point. I don't know exactly how high we are above that layer. It's very difficult to estimate. It's that's probably about 8,000 or so, in which case we might end up being above 0 degrees at that point. But we'll keep an eye on both. It's always a good idea to have that switched on at any point, even if you are above 0, because your airframe can actually be still seriously under 0, and then any moisture hit it could ice up. So it's always worth preparing, and that's what we'll actually do now. So all of the ice controls are here. I'm just going to zoom in a bit so we can see what they say. The typically, well, we obviously have the pitot heat on, the inertial separation, windshield heat, propeller heat, de-icing boots. The other control that we can have is, and I'll zoom into this one, is defrost on the windscreen. So we'll probably stick that on. Maybe no need for anything else here at this point unless we get a nice warning. So we're just approaching the 10,000 foot point, so we can stick landing lights on now as well. And we set local QNH, well, 30 at this point. And the next will be before landing checks. And I just want to find out what the orientation of the runway is. That's at Oceano, which is 1129. So we're going to kind of cross the midfield, almost crosswind. But it's right on the coast, very easy to find. It's not so easy to find when you're not so close. That's the only problem with it. So the other thing, obviously, speed below 250, which is a regulation. and we are below, so no problem there. Just quickly check the pressure at KSBP St Louis, and that's 2997. And then Santa Maria is 2998. So that's probably a better one to use. Let's use 2997 because that's actually nearer. And I just heard the altitude along. I'm going to continue the descent. I set it for the safety altitude, of course, which is why it's just temporarily ceased our descent. So let's just set that up again. We'll set that up to 3,000 feet, and we'll tweak that down to 2,500. So about to hit the cloud layer, and you can see the outside air temperature -2, so it's not really going to worry us too much. What we can do actually at this point is just bring back the speed a little bit as we get closer, and see a 13.8 miles. I don't want to bring it back too much, but just maybe just down to 230 and just progressively slow down as we get nearer. Just switching to heading hold as well, and that will allow us to change the course. It's quite useful. Change the CDI. Don't know how we do this on here actually. Oh yeah, there we are. 29. Put that as 29, so we know this is the orientation of the runway. It's absolutely doesn't serve any other purpose other than just a quick reminder. And then let's come down to 180 on the speed as well. So this is one of the differences between flying this and the Challenger is the approach speed about 80 to 90 knots. Challenger 120. It's quite a bit slower. So you go from the transition from sort of 250 down to 90. It's quite a big jump. Just realised I haven't actually set that up very well at all. 290 I said, I think. There we go. It's increasing the pitch a little bit of the propeller. And there we have Oceano town, city, or whatever it is. Get a view of that as well. And you can see the airfield, you should be able to see the airfield just beyond the city. It's the last thing you get before you hit the beach. You see it now, straight on the nose. So we're flying the overhead now, and then we'll fly downwind and we'll land towards the west. So the other thing to put on at this point is the igniter. And we'll spin around. We'll do a turn to 120. See if we get a good view of the airport. We can just see the tail end of that, the 29 threshold. What's going on here? Let's take the autopilot off. Sometimes they're more trouble than they're worth. So we can actually stick the gear down. That's a really nice way of keeping the speed under control. And then we can stick a stage of flap in as well. So the first stage is actually, you can put that in before 130. That 130 is actually apparently refers to the second stage of flap. I'm not sure how true that is, but that's something I've read. So this is where setting that course indicator actually is quite useful. And we can stick the second stage in as well. Oh, I've lost the airfield now. Just keep the turn going round.
1,000.
Even in this aircraft, we don't want to find ourselves too slow. Where has it gone? I think I see it. So, pre-landing checks out everything, set all the belts and everything. Gear is down, we've got full flap. So 90 knots, which is good. I'll say 700 metres is actually quite a decent length, so we should be able to, this aircraft like this will handle that no problem. So this is just ortho for XP scenery in the area, and then the airport is Orbix. As I say, it's a free download. Never heard of it before actually, but it's a nice airport because it's fairly detailed. I imagine it'd be a fabulous place to base an aircraft.
500.
Quite a wind check, just slightly from the left. Just realised I'm not actually lined up with the runway. It's going to land on the grass area between the runway and taxiway. There we are.
200. 100. 50. 40. 30. 20. 10.
All over the place here. I'll just taxi to the end. It's nicely detailed. I've never been here, so I don't know, but I'm imagining this is fairly accurate. So let's just pull up there. We'll do the after landing checks. So landing light can come off and taxi can come on. Strobes can come off. I have a after landing page on here. So transponder mode can come off and set 1200. Pitot heat and igniter can come off and then 5 switches: your standby, altitude, the trim master, autopilot, master switch, the stick pusher and the pressurization, and fuel pumps can come off. And we're good. Next will be the shutdown. So let's stick it in front of the fuel. Managed to do that on the left tank. There's probably not a huge amount left. There's always people watching aircraft activity when I'm here. Don't know if we'd actually get through there, but I imagine that's clear. There we are, that'll do. Okay, shutdown checks then. So power lever, propeller to feather. We've got low idle set already. Trim master's off. Autopilot master is off. External lights, taxi light can come off right now. We'll leave the beacon on for the moment. Air conditioning fan and oxygen can come off as well, and that defrost can come off. As the other thing I should mention, actually, we've got a 1 minute cool down for the engine, so we can do all of those, all of these checks while we're allowing that for that cool down time. Anything else here? Let's have a quick look down here. Well, that can come off. We have to switch it off there though. Generator can keep on. Beacon will stay on until we've completely closed down. And we'll say that's a minute, okay? Always go into external view. I just love the sound of this when it's closing down. Okay, so beacon can come off at this point. And we will switch the fuel off. And we can get the ground power unit connected now and open the door. But that's it, that's the flight done. Hope you enjoyed that. This aircraft is really good fun. I thoroughly enjoy it. Bit challenging, but it's good. It's a good compromise really between the airlines and the freedom that sort of GA gives you. So thanks for your company today. Hope you enjoyed it. Got any questions, put those in the comments, but I'll see you on the next one. Take care. Bye bye.